Hi, everyone. Good morning. I am excited to talk to you a little bit about my experience as a teenager and mentoring a teenager in foster care, and how I think it connects to the job search. So, what I want to talk about today is I was actually really, really troubled teenager. I was wild and got into a lot of trouble. And I think sometimes, you know when you're doing something wrong, and you also know when you're not doing something wrong. And I had created such a reputation that people just assumed the worst. And I think it was really tough for me, and it probably like accelerated my bad behavior because I felt really unseen. Like, but don't you see all the other things that I'm doing? And it's really not what they could do. They could just see the bad behavior. And I'm seeing this very similarly with the young woman, she's 15 in foster care that I mentor, because actually, when you live in a group home, when you're in foster care, you have a case file. So everything you've ever done wrong, the rules you've broken, it all gets recorded and it follows you around for the rest of your life. Like if you're trying to get a new foster family, they get to see that file. It's like having a walking journal. Um, and it's pretty terrible. And so when people see her, I feel like often they're thinking, like, for a while she wasn't going to school and people thought it was the willingness to not go. Like she just wasn't putting in the effort, and that's all they could see. And I think that was really hard for her because when I talked to her, it was something completely different. It was she's like, I want to graduate. I'm like, great. Let's figure out how to do that. And I was able to identify it was the school. So she went from not going to school for a year and a half to now going to school just about every day unless there's an appointment. So part of part of what I wanted to talk about when I was reflecting on that is just the feeling of being seen and how much it matters. And I think there's a couple of things here um, that I want to highlight. One is just the power of mentorship and having someone in your corner. When I was reading the book Change or Die, this was one of the things it talked about. One of the key quotes was something around the lines of, like, in order for someone to make progress, they need someone else to see what they're capable of and believe that. And I think I see this a lot in foster care. Like they just assume the worst and don't actually believe they're going to graduate. So they're like, a lot of people are just okay that, these kids aren't going to school, but they need someone to believe that they can. And I think that um, we all needed this in our job search too, that you have someone in your corner that believes that you have a unique value that you bring and you can land a role at a company you want to work for. I think this has a lot to do too with kind of I've talked a little bit about this, but like the frame of mind in terms of like this black hole application process, which then gets you to apply for jobs you don't even want. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I can't even get these jobs I don't want. Um, and so, like, once you start settling for lower jobs, I think that's something where someone in your corner can help you continually um, remind you that that's not what you want. So, I think there's that of like the power of mentorship, the power of having a coach, someone in your corner, a community too. And I think that's really important. And what I'm trying to build around the Phoenix formula is that you don't have to do it alone. And you need people in your corner going through it who can empathize, but also push you to go get what you want in your life. And so the other key thing I want to talk about in terms of this message is just I think that it's easy for job seekers to look and not get jobs and say, I'm just not qualified. Or I am qualified and maybe there's just better candidates out there and that's why I'm not getting these jobs. But I think a really important thing to think about in terms of being seen is you have to see yourself first. And I think this is where the degrading of your confidence in a job search really affects your ability to get a job that you want. Um, and so when you think about being able to see yourself first, you have to know the unique value you bring and believe it. And you also, I think it's going to be a lot easier to feel seen if what you're putting out there is a good reflection of what you can do. And so I just did an exercise with a client this morning, and it was like putting everything together and doing his LinkedIn profile. And it's a beautiful experience. Like, that's why I do what I do. It was amazing to see his whole career and his unique differentiator and the value he can bring to a company, like summed up in a storytelling way on his LinkedIn. And I think this is part of being seen, is like making sure your assets and materials and your online brand represent you. And I think this helps you see yourself too. And it's gonna help others see you as well when it's, explained in a way that they can understand it. Um, I think sometimes when we feel unseen, it's an understanding issue too. Like, not to make this too complex, but, like, let's just take my mentee, for example. Like, for people who don't know her, they just assume that she's not going to school and she's not willing to put in the effort and she doesn't wanna graduate and she just wants to stay home and, Netflix all day and be on her phone. And if they didn't have the context that I do, that she wants to graduate, that she wants to have a self-sustaining job, that she wants to be able to travel, and, um, they might not know how to motivate her, or, she might not be seen. And so I think that's where we need someone to help us remind ourselves that, we do want what we want, and then be able to make it really easy to be seen, because your materials reflect that, right? Like, your resume reflects your value, your LinkedIn reflects your value, and then it all translates. I think a lot of times we think about our resume and our LinkedIn as like separate things. Like um like I'm gonna go do my resume, and I'm gonna have my LinkedIn, and it's going to be an example of what I did in the past. And I think for a lot of people, that's what it is. And I think another thing in terms of being seen in this is that it's like you have to speak someone's language that's looking at your profile and your resume. And I think in order to do this, to be seen, you need to be able to articulate articulate it in a way that they would understand. So one way I think about doing this is like, okay, you have to niche down on a role first of all, because you can't have 20 LinkedIn profiles. You can only have one, and that's your first interview. But like, once you do that, and let's say you want to be a VP of sales, for example, um, and the first thing I'm gonna look at in terms of being able to make sure that you can be seen by an SVP of sales is that you're articulating things in a way that would resonate with them, so that you're speaking their language. So I would go in and say, use AI, what are the goals and OKRs for an SVP of sales at this company that I wanna work for, right? At Workday or Salesforce or whatever. And so, and get to know what those goals are, um, across a variety of jobs, so that you're positioning what you've done in a way that, in a language that they understand, where they can easily see you can help them meet their goals. So I think this is probably way too much content for right now, but just, if you think about anything from today, think about the feeling of feeling unseen, which I think a lot of people feel with the rejection of the black hole applications, and some tactical things that can help you feel seen, which is making sure your materials reflect your true value. Really go on and look at them. Have other people look at them and say, do you think this reflects what I can do? And have them show you areas where it might not. And then also, um, yeah, have your materials, and then position your materials in a language that a hiring manager is going to understand. So those are like two key things, really big things. I will break them down in my private podcast on how to do them more specifically. And so you can go to my website, sign up for my private podcast, and I look forward to helping you on your career journey. All right.